How can an organization or a team determine whether they're tracking the right metrics? And what can they do if they realize they've been measuring the wrong thing all along?
You need to track whatever is going to help you get to where you want to go. Everything else is noise.
Walk us through an example, either of a metric that was maybe the wrong metric and that process of how they changed towards measuring the right thing.
One of our customers, he wanted to improve how they forecast what they're going to deliver every quarter. He was able, to take our platform and automate it. And it took him a day. But now, whenever he wants, he has that in front of him, what am I going to deliver this month? Do you think there is a stage where an AI agent becomes a project manager or replaces the project manager completely?
I think for some people's definition of what a project manager does, yes. Welcome to the Digital Project Manager Podcast, the show that helps delivery leaders work smarter, deliver faster, and lead better in the age of AI. I'm Galen, and every week we dive into real-world strategies, new tools, proven frameworks, and the occasional war story from the project front lines. Whether you're steering massive transformation projects, wrangling AI workflows, or just trying to keep the chaos under control, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Today we are talking about how traditional views of measuring project success are being challenged, and why AI-powered KPI management tools might be your only fighting chance to keep pace with the growing list of variables that could make or break your project's outcomes. With me today is Lior Gerson, co-founder and CEO of TargetBoard.ai. Lior started his career at MySupermarket, which was the largest price comparison website in the UK, servicing tens of millions of users every month. There, he was responsible for multi-million-dollar projects, collaborating with giants such as Walmart, WPP, and Dentsu. And then he moved on to found Vroom as CTO, an online car dealership that went public for $2.5 billion. After that, he led product for Placer.ai, a location analytics unicorn processing petabytes of data. And of course, today he leads TargetBoard, an AI-powered KPI management tool. Lior, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Galen. It's a pleasure being here.
I'm really excited to talk to you because you are someone who's incredibly deep in the world of KPIs and making data-informed decisions towards success. And honestly, I hope this conversation goes places that I hadn't planned, but here's the roadmap that I've sketched out for us today. So to start us off, I wanted to get one big burning question out of the way, the hot question that everyone wants to know. But after that, I'd like to zoom out from that and talk about three things. First, I wanted to talk about culture mismatch around KPIs and how to translate metrics across different levels of an organization. Then I'd like to talk about how project KPIs are changing and where you see them going. And lastly, I thought maybe we could zero in on some practical ways that businesses and project teams can get started on leveraging AI-enhanced KPI tracking and how that might impact their workflows for better or for worse. How does that sound to you?
Sounds great. I think it's going to be a fascinating discussion.
Awesome. Me too. All right, here's the hot question. Lately, there's been a lot of talk about the fact that a lot of projects and actually entire organizations might be actually measuring and tracking the wrong thing. So for projects, I've seen a lot of discourse challenging everything from the formerly sacred iron triangle of scope, schedule, and budget, all the way to agile metrics like velocity. And then organizationally, I've seen folks take aim at things like revenue per FTE, gross margin, and utilization. And the big thing that's being talked about in my world, at least the project management world, is how project leaders shouldn't just measure project health, but also project impact. So against that backdrop, my hot question is, how can an organization or a team determine whether they're tracking the right metrics? And what can they do if they realize they've been measuring the wrong thing all along?
Yeah, that's a great question. The project initiatives that you're using are set to be aligned with the business strategy, right? With the product strategy, with wherever the business wants to go. But when you put it in the box of project management, all you really want to achieve is saying, okay, I want to reach my milestones on time, on budget, with, as little friction and as much, accuracy and predictability as possible, right? So all the metrics that you need to track are the metrics that are going to help you get to that state, right? It doesn't be anything. It could be, how fast tasks are moving, where things are blocked, vacation days, how people are using AI. You can track anything as long as it keeps you in that box of what you're actually trying to achieve. But if you're not tracking the things that are going to help you reach that, you're tracking the wrong things.
I like that perspective because I think we tend to gravitate towards the right things to measure. I even said it in the question, what is the right thing to measure? You're saying actually whatever the thing is that helps move you forward is the right thing to measure, even if it's way different than what that other team is doing, even if it's way different than what you did at that other organization. Like it should be aligned to the mission.
You need to track whatever is going to help you get to where you want to go. Everything else is noise.
That's fair. That's fair. So, I mean, for folks who are like, oh, wow, Lior, you're speaking my language. We are definitely not tracking the right things. We need to start. How do you kind of map out what the right things are to push you forward? Is there a sort of best practice or a process?
You need to understand your business, right? You need to understand your project. You understand what's moving the needle. What are the movers and shakers? What's going to make an impact? Is it people? Is it resources? Is it complexity? How do you sort of unpack everything to say, okay, these are the components. This is what needs to happen. Now, how do I track that it's actually happening and not sort of falling between the cracks? Right? Well, this is complicated. Like you're going to have like lots of tools, and like data is going to be all over the place. It's not going to be updated, and you're going to say, oh, well, people are not updating their system, so it's garbage in, garbage out. I can't do it, and I'm spending all this time. It's not showing any returns. There's like a million ways and a million reasons why it's not going to work, but you need it to work. So it's on you.
Okay, that makes sense to me. I'm wondering, would you be able to just maybe walk us through an example, either of a metric that was maybe the wrong metric and that process of how they changed towards measuring the right thing, or even if there was just some unconventional metric that somebody that you worked with was tracking that actually pushed forward towards the goals, but actually is a pretty non-traditional thing to measure?
Let me talk about like one of our customers. They're called VersaPay, and they're a VP of delivery and product operations. It's called Subu. He's a brilliant guy. We love him. We love working with him. And he wanted to improve like how they forecast what they're going to deliver every quarter, right? So plan versus actual, improving the planning accuracy, improving forecasting. They're running very fast and things are changing all the time, right? So priorities change, capacities change, people move between teams. So it becomes really complicated. And what he came up with was a formula that helps take the previous performance of every contributor and every team and then add that on to whatever like the current capacity for that team or that group is going to be. And instead of, having to sort of crunch all that data in Excel, which takes a lot of time, you have to bring in like, data about vacation days and, tasks and priorities and lots and lots of stuff. And doing it in Excel, so he was able, to take our platform and like automate it. And it took him like a day. But now, whenever he wants, he has like that in front of him. Like, okay, what am I going to deliver this month? So like the CEO or the CPO comes in and say, hey, I need to shift priority. Something else comes, is most important. So he has it like that on what's actually going to change and how it's actually impacting all the initiatives that they're trying to push. I thought it was brilliant. Taking data, and putting it in the right context to tell the story that he needs to tell.
I was just at an Agile conference and I mentioned velocity earlier, right? And everyone's kind of like, yeah, it's like a poor measure of impact. And sometimes it's just a poor measure because, in a lot of Agile teams, you're meant to have a dedicated team, the resource full time. And people I talk to, they're like, that never happens. People are, to your point, they're going on vacation, they're getting pulled away to other projects. So you look at this velocity metric and it's going like, up and down, and you're trying to plan ahead and you're like, what is going on? It's like, it's not a very good metric. And I would say most people probably they either wouldn't think to have an aggregate metric that is based on dynamic data, or they wouldn't know how to build it, right? But I think that makes a lot of sense. It's almost like this notion of like real-time resourcing, where it's like, okay, well, this person's going to be away. We should expect this dip in this metric about our output, about our performance, about our impact, whatever it is. It's actually grabbing data from other places, not just trying to have like the one measure, the one metric to rule them all. I mean, it does function as that, but it's an aggregate metric. Actually, I think that's really cool.
It's interesting you bring this up, right? But think about like how data propagates across the business. That person goes away, right? It takes time until people know their way, right? Like his manager's going to know their way, but until that propagates to the right person who has like the understanding of how it's going to impact the project timelines and, what, secondary or tertiary effect is going to have, it's going to take days or weeks. And so that's time you're not getting back, right? You add more resources, you're just going to extend the timeline. It's not like it's going to make it shorter. They have a learning curve. So the faster you're able to get that information across your organization, getting it to the right people, it's massive impact. It's compounding interest.
Mm-hmm. That lag is like so real. In our community, there's always a lot of conversation about like, well, I wish someone had told me that my lead dev was going to be going on holiday for 3 weeks. And then like, even that lag, like I see it in my role all the time where it's like, you get the like ADP like vacation request and you go in there and like there's a process and a flow and bottlenecking that happens before anyone even knows that that person's vacation is approved, a little less what like date that is. But I like that kind of streams it in.
Vacation is easy. Think about, you're working remote, you're on Zoom, and somebody's gone. They're just gone. Let go. Nobody told you to be let go.
Yeah, okay, I see.
2 weeks in, he's not answering my calls. I'm like, what's up? Oh, he's not here anymore.
He's not here, yeah. We're hearing a lot about that too in the community, right? Just like reductions enforced without the communication around it. Yeah, and then what? Can you, this is a bit of a side quest, but can you at a high level like walk me through what that integration looks like? Because I'm picturing myself opening Excel and being like, okay, I need to like Zapier or Make or like do some kind of transformation of data and like have it like paste into a sheet. And I have to like write a formula and all that. Like, would I still have to do that in TargetBoard or like is integration a little bit more hands-free? Hands-free might not be the right word, but less labor intensive.
So TargetBoard works in a very different way from any other system that exists there. We connect to your source data, your source system, and we automatically build all the metrics and all the KPIs that are relevant for whatever you need to do. Right? And we use AI to generate them, but it doesn't matter if you're looking, at metrics for how your capacity changes, how your velocity changes, how the quality changes. If you're looking at one project, multiple projects, it doesn't matter how you work. You don't have to change anything about how you work. We automatically learn how you work with your systems. It doesn't matter if you're using Monday or if you're using Jira or anything else, right? And then all your metrics, all your reports, all your insights are automatically generated. And you can then customize. It's like DIY customization, or you can do it with your team. But you'll get the exact metrics and the exact way of tracking everything that you want at like zero effort. Like it's like day one, you're up and running, fully confident that the data you need is there and it's accurate. And you don't need to worry about Excels anymore. By the way, if you do use Excels for like manual tracking, and that's like your source of truth, that's fine. We'll connect to the Excel. We'll pull it in also. But you don't need to update anymore, right? You don't need to explain how things are. How did you measure this? What is this based on? Like all these questions, they're answered in the platform. Like you share it like with your executive, with your C-level, they'll have the answers of how things are measured, where they're coming from, where it's going, what's moving the needle. It's not like, you don't have a situation of, you're sitting in that meeting and you're getting asked a hard question and you don't have the answer. You have to say, let me get back to you. And let me get back to you, it's like the worst thing to ever say. It's like, I don't know. I'm sorry, I didn't come prepared. I don't know. I didn't study for this test. So it's all there was like one click and now like the follow-up is there.
What I like as well is like the human error component. Like I do track a bunch of stuff in a spreadsheet. There was an incident where I was tracking page views in Google Analytics 4 and someone was putting in users. So we had this discrepancy of like, we thought we were measuring the same thing, but actually we had two different data sources. I was messing it up. But anyways, that notion of like somebody might have a different interpretation of where that data comes from to measure that metric versus I like the idea that like, okay, it's pulling directly from a source of truth. Oh, and by the way, like it generated some of the metrics using AI based on, what the requirements are to like be like, you should probably measure this. And that gets sort of defined and integrated because I've been in a lot of conversations where we can't quite decide on what the right metric of success is, partly because we don't know what we can measure, right? We're pulling from our deck of cards that only has like 4 options. And we're like, okay, which one of these 4? Whereas it could be a lot of different things to your earlier point.
It's so common. Listen, I worked at a company and when I came in, Galen was tracking like 100,000 visits per month. And I'd be the big company. And I said, well, where's this coming from? It looks weird. And I was leading product there. And it turns out that the website was actually getting 10,000 visits, like 10%. The other 90% were like key automation bots. And, the business doesn't know. The fact that the business doesn't know also means that when you find this, you have to explain it. So the CMO has to go and say, hey, by the way, you know how I reported my CAC and everything, for the last year? By the way, I like 90% off.
Not a fun conversation.
Yeah.
I wonder if we could use that actually to zoom out a little bit because I find that metrics are just a thing, right? Like the fact of the matter is that like even if a team or department is measuring the right thing, like there's often like this translation that needs to happen between different levels of an organization or different departments. For example, a Scrum team might be tracking customer satisfaction, like CSAT, maybe they're tracking it release over release, but like maybe the leadership is tracking like, I don't know, like recurring revenue and like retention and churn. Can a tool like TargetBoard help translate KPIs for one audience in a way that makes them meaningful for other levels of an organization? Or is this just like one of those things that like a tool on its own just can't fix?
I want to take a step back on this question. If you think about metrics in general, the traditional way of doing BI and tracking metrics means that you have to build every metric. You have to do like a session and plan every one of your metrics. So there's an actual cost on anything you want to track. Like you have to develop it, right? And then when you think about programs like OKRs, QBRs, they're sort of very top down, they tell you exactly what you need to track. And it gives you like a tunnel vision of this is what I'm going to track. I might have a lot of other things that are going to be really important for me because they have to keep the boat afloat, but I'm not going to report on them. And maybe I'm not going to even track them because I don't have the resources to do that. So with TargetBoard, we track everything. And we make it very easy for you to pick and choose. We even recommend what to pick and choose to focus on, right? And then you can set alerts and get insights and notifications, all of that to make sure the thing you care about and track are there. But we also make it really easy to explain. Like we actually have features saying, how do I explain this up? How do I explain this down? It's like AI generated. Okay, take this metric. Help me explain this to my manager. Help me explain it to my developer or to my sales rep to understand why it's important for me and how I want him to think about that. So absolutely, like getting the whole semantic layer, protecting you to make sure that everybody, like we get this feature requests every day. Can I rename my metric? No, you can't, because somebody's already has this metric. They always have a name for it. You can't just go ahead and give it another name. And by the way, if that name is not representative of what you're actually tracking, you can't give it that name. So we have all these features to help you sort of protect and make sure that you're actually tracking what you're saying you're tracking, and you're actually able to explain what it is that you are tracking, why that is.
I think that's such a cool feature because, I don't know, I've worked with a lot of dashboarding software over the years, not like deep, but, you know, have exposure to it. And that's usually the gap, right? To your point, it's like, okay, well, that's all fine and good. Like, what is this dashboard telling me? Like, can you explain this? And then the data storytelling becomes the gap because not everyone is great at it. Some people are great at it, and maybe that's the superhero skill. But I like the idea that AI can help you educate someone about why this metric is important, where it comes from, what it means if it's wavering. And that is not necessarily like, I'm sure it could deliver that answer directly from the tool. But I like your framing of like arming a human to be able to explain their metric well to someone who is not them, to someone who is in a different department, has different specializations, has different knowledge, and still can like frame that narrative of like what this all means, so that we're not just looking at a bunch of numbers and going, wow, that changed 45% week over week. That's interesting. All right, let's move on.
That's what happens.
Mm-hmm. Everyone kind of like looks at it. They're like shrugging. They're like, wow, that's a big number. And then we like move on. But no one actually understood.
Well, people never read the reports. You'll have like scheduled reports. You'll have a dashboard help. People don't really read the reports unless they have like a very specific. They want the reports to be there, right? They want to know that somebody is tracking that data is there in case they need it. But they very rarely read the reports. I think, it's the outlier. By the way, when we send reports, we also have an AI agent that sort of analyzes them and summarizes them for the business user. So they get like, okay, so you just gave me this big report on what I actually care about.
yeah, it's like, please summarize this for me. I like that it's inbuilt. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I remember you telling me in the green room that there is like this conversational aspect to it as well. Like not just the summary of here's what's important about, this report, but I was complaining about, Google Analytics 4, my favorite villain, which looks like it's set up to like have a conversation to be like, especially in the world of web, I'd be like, how many unique visitors did I get to this page last week compared to the same time, last year? Maybe there's a way to do it. It's never really worked for me. Or even like, please explain this metric to me. Is that a feature that you have developed, are developing? Just a conversational sort of insights.
So I think, a lot of people are trying to crack it. I think what you're experiencing in GA4, you'll see the same thing in mixed panel and Tableau and so on and so on. And the problem is that LLMs are really bad with data. They seem to be getting better, but if you ask them, how many, you upload a CSV and you'll tell them, hey, can you tell me what's my email open rate? They won't be able to give you the answer unless you really specify like each column, the CSV, what they do. And so And we think we solved that. So we have added that to the platform. You are able to ask questions and get reliable, trustworthy information that the AI also checks to verify that it's not hallucinating. And we think that that's sort of, it's going to be a killer feature because people are going to want to process and consume data multiple ways. It's not going to be only conversational or only dashboards, but you have different ways and different needs to interact with data. And I think that they complement each other very well. It's a little bit like, retail 10 years ago, where it's, am I, investing in mobile or not? So it's everybody went and did omni-channel, and that's sort of, I think, where data is going also. And it's working pretty cool, but not a lot of people are using it. I think like when we think about people being able to accurately phrase in text the question that you want answered in data is not that straightforward. And because you have like the waiting cycle, you have like, you're going to have to ask 10 questions by, to get like the one answer you could have got on a dashboard like with 2 clicks.
Yeah, it actually might not be shorter.
How many deals did I close last month? Oh, by the way, I actually care about like one region. So can you down to, and can you show it to me by, so it's a lot of writing, a lot of waiting for response where, on the web, it just clicks.
And I like that idea that data is different, right? Like, and I have experienced that with quite simple data, like timesheet data into ChatGPT. And it's just like, it just starts hallucinating or, like grabbing the wrong thing. And I'm like, oh, like our brains are so wired to think in tabular data, but not necessarily these LLMs. I like this idea that yes, please don't just take that report necessarily and shove it into ChatGPT and expect it to kind of be good at the data analysis. That's why I like that you're building your own feature. B, I like that it checks itself, right? Maybe that's sort of standard fare for like a data scientist, but I like the idea that it's like, there is another process. It's going to be like, before I deliver this very important information about, performance and metrics and impact, is it right? Before I just sort of blurt it out.
Trust is everything. That's the risk, with like MCP servers. So like you're asking for data from like whatever system, you don't actually know what the AI is going to do with it and like how accurate like the response is going to. What we do with our MCP server, by the way, is that it verifies that the data, and that's across all your systems. So pull data from all your systems, combine it together, and verify that the metrics and the responses you're getting is 100% accurate.
Yeah, it actually, your MCP server, your model context protocol, that server is the backbone. It's like the thing that's vetting all the data coming into it, not just one player on the field.
Coming in and coming out.
That's very cool. I wanted to dig into the future of metrics. Just get your POV, because the sense I get from the circles I travel in is that things are changing around metrics. You can't just have like a static scoreboard anymore with the usual KPIs. But I was hoping if I could get your POV and like look a bit into the future. What are some unconventional metrics that you see emerging that might be setting the tone for what KPIs might look like in the future? Or what are your predictions about how organizations will track KPIs like 3, 5, 10 years from now?
So I think at the micro level, you'll see much more like AI KPIs. And we're already starting to see that, right? Like, how many agents am I running? How effective they are? What are they doing, to the business KPIs? But at the business level, at the high level, I think you care less about how it's done, right? So I think not a lot's going to change. If you're tracking ARR, if you're tracking churn, you're tracking delivery times, the top metrics are going to stay the same. So that's the language of your business. What happens underneath the hood is going to change. And there also, I think so if you take it one step down, saying, okay, like we need to deliver A, B, and C, but now we're tracking velocity or we're tracking quality. Then the velocity and the quality are the second level of those metrics. If you take it one level below, then you're starting to say, okay, so my velocity, what is it made out of, right? Okay, so it's some development work. It's, things that are blocked here and there, things that are stuck in review, things that, had their scope changed and they had to circle back and, I had to like open the context. And, oh, by the way, I have all these AIs that are doing stuff and some of them are working, some of them not working. And now I have to spend time and resources figuring out like why, GPT-5 is not giving me the same results that I was expecting GPT-4. So, that it's that level of the nitty gritty details of, what's moving the needle behind the scenes.
I love that sort of layering, because I think you're right. I mean, if as long as your business model is the same, some of those top, I think you described it earlier as like a top-down metric, right? The OKR tunnel vision sort of top of the chain might not change that much. But I do love that idea that like beneath, it could be changing a lot. And that's where, when we started this conversation, you were like, you could just measure what's going to help you get to your goal. If your goal is to have more people using AI to make better decisions, and that's going to move you towards your goal, then, track that at that lower level, cycle time. And actually, the thing you were mentioning earlier about people don't always know how to ask for what they want. You had it in a data context, but I'd say, in general for prompting, and I was tagged into a post on LinkedIn by Jim Highsmith, who was a co-author of the Agile Manifesto. And he had written this story, about these folks kind of like thinking through new metrics. And I don't know if I'm coming from a place of ignorance on this, if people are measuring this, but one of the things was prompt quality index, right? Measuring the quality of people's prompts. Because to your point, just because people are using AI doesn't mean it's actually making them more efficient. They could be in circular conversations with a robot and they would still show up as using AI in their job, but maybe not necessarily having like high quality prompts. I don't know how you'd go about measuring that, by the way, but I like that notion that, what matters to measure at the lower levels will change and can change quite a bit. And at the top levels might not change that much in terms of, like business success and like growth and revenue metrics. But I guess maybe for me, the question is like, isn't it a lot? Like you had mentioned it. I think I know what I think I know what your answer might be, but there's a lot of overhead every time you like change a metric, because then you need to like figure on a way to like connect it to a source and educate people on what it means, and then get people in the cadence of like reporting on it and understanding how it's pushing things forward. Is that going to be in the future, or even now, a sort of like heavy operational overhead that businesses and teams should plan for, to be like, we need like a data person on everything, because when we change our metrics because of ChatGPT 5 releasing or whatever, like we need someone who's going to be right there ready to like wire it up, like please wire up this new metric so that we can keep going.
That's the state today. That's what's happening now. It's been happening for years, right? You have an analyst or analyst team for every department. And that's what they do, right? They just make sure that the metrics are working. And it's not even custom metrics, right? They're just reinventing the wheel. Everybody's using pretty much the same metrics out there. But, big companies, they love replatforming. They love replatforming. It's like all they do all day is replatforming, like migrating from one system to another system does the same thing. So but each time they replatform, it creates this whole big data project of, so now we have to update all our reports, right? So there's a huge cycle of job security there. And part of what we do is saying, you actually don't need all of that. Like you can replatform, and all your reporting, all your metrics are going to stay the same. And if you have to update it, you can automatically set it up to notify everybody who needs to know that the metric has been updated. And you don't have to do anything to update it. It does it on its own. I think the world today is broken because people have too many systems or too many data that they can't really use. And I think where it's going is that tools like TargetBoard are going to make it much easier to use that data and to get to that data. And you don't need all those men in the middle. A lot of times don't actually understand your business. Like we had a conversation with the chief strategy officer of a major company. I don't want to say the name. And he said, well, I have like 100 BI and LS people on my team. And every time he has a question, every time I have a new question, it takes me at least 6 months to get an answer. Well, the data is there, the infrastructure is there, but it has to go through so many people for them to understand what I'm actually asking that it takes fun. I told him, we can give it to you today. By the way, he told me, but I can't convince the data guys to take it. That's a different problem. It's my problem. But you see where I'm going.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I've seen that happen. I've seen it happen, especially in financial services. I've seen it in like CX and the customer experience craft. Like they're trying to use data to create, an intelligent customer experience based on stuff that's being gathered across many departments. And yet, to your point, they're gathering tons of data. No one knows what it is or what to do with it or how to like turn it into something that could improve customer experience. It's just there. And like sometimes people are just scoreboard watching, and then eventually they get disappointed and they replatform. Right? So
it takes me back to like what you said before, like, what are people tracking? So a lot of people are tracking like costs, right? And cloud costs. And now people are tracking, prompt cost. Like how much are they spending and how to optimize prompts so they spend less money on their LLMs. And you have all this data that is just sitting there in companies, and it has a cost. It has a storage cost and a tracking cost, and amazing, and nobody knows why. And you have like all this data, nobody's using that. So it's like, these like people who collect stuff and like, in their garage and don't use it.
Yeah, the hoarding.
So companies become data hoarders with endless systems. They don't use them for anything.
Because you know what? We were taught to think it was cheap, right? That like storage is cheap. This is just a few numbers. Yeah, exactly. It was cheap. And now it's not anymore. And now we're thinking about, like cost per prompt and like, like these sort of transactional calls and also the storage because it's more complex now. And also we've been accruing it for decades. It's not doing anything with it. I can relate to that. I'm a pack rat as well. I try not to delete pretty much anything. So thank you, Cloud, for making that a reality that I could do that. But also to your point, even with some of that stuff, like I'm not doing anything with it. It comforts me that it's there.
Maybe you'll need it. Maybe in 10 years you'll need it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. Listen, I had it here to ask you sort of about TargetBoard and your positioning as an AI enhanced KPI tool. You've already kind of walked us through some of the AI driven features. There's the sort of AI driven suggestions of metrics. There is the sort of insights summaries, I guess, from a data perspective. Yeah, I mean, is there any other like AI feature that you want to talk through? Or maybe even the other side of it is like, what made you decide to like double down on AI? Like it's in the name. Well, it's at least in the domain name, right? Like AI, like it clearly was core to the DNA of the solution that you've built. What are you most proud of about it and where do you see it going?
So I think it's a complicated question, right? I'm proud about a lot of things. I think we've been able to leverage AI from very, very early on to really augment what we're trying to build an experience we're trying to create. There's pros and cons of being an AI first company. And I think we're AI second company. But AI is very, very prominent in everything we do. And like every feature we build, we say, okay, how does AI make it better? Not how do we do this with AI, but what are we trying to build and how does AI make this significantly better than you could have before? So let me give you an example. So we have all your metrics, right? And for any metric, doesn't matter how you slice and dice it, you can create notifications, automations, and alerts, and so on and so on. Right? So you have a deal that's stuck in a pipeline, create an alert. You have a bug in production, you have a support ticket that's, for a very specific tier of customer and you're not meeting your SLA, create an alert, send it to wherever it needs to go. But having people think about the alerts that they want to create is a hassle, right? People need to think about having to think about what they want to create and how to do that. So, for example, what we released this week is that the AI, when you're looking at a metric, it will suggest the automation that you can create to improve that metric. We already have like recommendation, like strategies for how to improve metric. Like, I actually recommend the automation that you can create. Like one click of a button, it'll create it for you. And this was relatively way harder to do pre-AI. And now it's much easier, right? We're moving faster today than I've ever moved on any other company before.
That's fair and also insane based on what I know about your background. It is a good use of it. I mean, I think like what I find is that there's a natural sort of cultural inclusion of AI in the world of data because, coming from like the benefits of machine learning and frankly, just dealing with swaths and swaths of data, right? Like even in your previous roles where like your tools are like, they're processing petabytes of data. We don't even have a like conceptual, tangible model for what that even looks like in our brains. So it makes sense that like, okay, we're going to need like compute power. But what I really like is that sort of, and I like it actually in the LLMs too right now, right? Where it's like, suggest to me what to do next, whether it's right or wrong. And then I will learn what you think is the right or wrong next step. And then I will continue to suggest it because, to this day, I see a lot of folks, and especially when I'm out of my element, like I do a thing and I'm like, what should I do next? Like, I'm not sure. But if something, helpful Clippy, right, is going, hey, are you writing a letter? Do you want to, like put a letterhead on it? Actually is a great way to like, I don't know, just kind of cut through discomfort or doubt or hesitation or just like knowledge gaps of like, actually, I wasn't sure what to do next, but actually a little alert would be great. Thank you very much. A little notification. And then to your point, at least I'm assuming it also sets up that notification. It's like, great, I'm on it. I've done it. It's done. Every Tuesday, you're going to get this notification about this metric or when it's out of tolerance or,
It's a very different approach than, what data science was like, 3 years ago. So taking an example, from Get a Car, we had a team of data scientists that, did auto finance optimization, like which every time you get a credit application, which lender you send it to. That was, like a team that worked on it nonstop, trying to maximize, the single digit percentages of how do you get more applications approved. And that was like a data science project. Now it's like every feature you build, you're saying, okay, how do I make this better? And it's not simple, but if you do it right, you're able to get like just amazing results and very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm. I love how fast these things are changing, right? Maybe just for fun, do you have a question that you want to ask me?
What are the most impactful trends that you're seeing as project management today?
That's a good one. I think the biggest one is actually the one I started out with, which is this notion that project managers are not just, iron triangle people trying to deliver projects on time, on budget, within scope. This sort of like this revelation that actually we can be more strategic, but we need to know more. We need to know more. We need to do more. And we were already doing a lot. And now we feel like we have to be sort of strategists or like delivery strategists. Like there's the onus is on us to understand the business more. And then there's this mysterious question of like, cool, like I'm accountable in some way for impact, but I'm not necessarily involved in measuring that impact. In a lot of cases, we lead a project and then we move on. It launches and we go away onto the next thing, off into the sunset. And now there's this big mindset shift of like, okay, well, actually we are value delivery specialists. We actually are meant to create the value, even if that means the plan was wrong and we had to change it, even if it means the scope was wrong and we had to change it along the way, even if it means battling personalities in the boardrooms and or in the dev pit. There's a much more strategic component to it. And I think we're still trying to figure it out. But then I think it dovetails very nicely with like our adoption of AI, where right now it's kind of like helping us be more efficient, shorten our workflows, create a bit more speed, but fundamentally help out with some of the stuff that we got bogged down with. A lot of project managers are like, I'm too busy to then also be a strategic partner for my stakeholders. And now there's this sort of rise that where it's like, okay, well, what are you doing? Well, okay, yeah, like all my status reports, like, oh, I've got to update the dashboard. I've got to go into Excel and update that spreadsheet. It's like, cool, you don't have to do that anymore because we can set up agents for that. We can, look to AI for solutions. And then the next thing is like, okay, but now what do I do at that time? How can I then learn the skills to be a bit more of a leader, a strategic leader in the delivery of value? I think that's an interesting trend in my world that I think intersects with a lot of this, because in a perfect world, we spend more of our time asking ourselves the question, are we doing the right thing to achieve the mission and have the impact? And that's almost exactly where you started about how do we know that we're measuring the right thing? You're measuring the right thing if it's helping you move forward. And I think that's kind of like an interesting aspect of project management and project leadership today.
Very cool. I'm going to ask you another question. So Harvard, I know what I think, but I want to hear what you think. We've been talking about AI and, talking about, how AI can help project managers automate and become more efficient, so on and so on. Do you think there is a stage where like an AI agent becomes a project manager or replaces the project manager like completely?
I think for some people's definition of what a project manager does, yes, because there is this sort of level of, oh, project managers are just administrators. They're taking notes, doing meeting minutes. They're following up with action items. They are measuring, an estimate against, an actual, how long it actually took to do. All that stuff, yeah, definitely, I think is almost easily replaced by AI. And I think the parts that are not are like the human to human decision making. Like I think for a while, at least, some of the big decisions, right? Replatforming decisions, risks around, implementation, I think will be conversations between humans. And that's why I really like your data storytelling feature, because it's not like, oh, it'll be like a little circle with a question mark in it. And like the executive can just click it and it goes, this metric is this. Instead, you're arming the person who owns that metric to tell the story about it. And I think that is the like decision-making layer in projects and in business that I think will continue to stay the same, like humans making their case, battling things out, convincing one another, persuading one another to make good decisions, and maybe think a little bit outside the box and think about, things that maybe haven't been done yet, and those sort of innovative thoughts. And I think that comes from humans interacting with one another. Not to say that AI won't or isn't innovative. Like I think it can create ideas that, most of its users haven't thought of yet. But fundamentally, I think it's still remixing. And I think fundamentally, we still treat it as a helper, not someone who's going to like make a decision for us. That's changing. But I think for now, I think
I agree with you. It also what makes the difference between like a good project manager and a bad one. And, if the CEO is telling people, oh, we can't afford a project manager, you just do that on the side. Like, you manage this project. And then like it doesn't work. It doesn't work because, it's a profession. You can't do it on the side.
Yeah, I like that. I like the idea that it's like, it might not replace all project managers, but it will probably replace the bad ones.
It's true for everything.
Lior, thanks so much for spending the time with me today. This has been so much fun. I love nerding out with you. Before you go, though, where can people learn more about you?
On LinkedIn. I get back to almost anybody who reaches out. Happy to speak to anybody.
That's awesome. I commend you. My LinkedIn inbox is such a mess. Thanks again.
Bye, Galen. It's been a pleasure.
That's it for today's episode of the Digital Project Manager Podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to subscribe wherever you're listening. And if you want even more tactical insights, case studies, and playbooks, head over to thedigitalprojectmanager.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.